Welcome to Insider Insights Podcast, a place where we dissect everything social media. I'm Theo, content writer at Socialinsider and a longtime fan of everything social. Every month, I'll talk to social media professionals who work in freelance, in-house for a company, or in an agency environment to get the best of all worlds. So grab your coffee and let's jump in. My guest for today is Steve Robeiro, the social media manager at HBO Max with over 5 years of experience in social media, working for several agencies and companies. We'll learn what it's like to work for one of the biggest pay television networks at the time, how to be present in the digital world as a social media manager, and how to use an extensive content library to create engaging social media posts. Steve will walk us through how HBO Max puts out quality content that adds to the cultural conversations around the shows and movies we all love. Hi, Steve. Thank you so much for accepting my invitation. I'm super happy to have you as my guest, and I look forward to hearing your social media story. How are you?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
I'm good as well. Thank you. Okay, so let's start this podcast episode by getting to know you a little bit better. How would you describe yourself in a few words?
I think like an easy way to, describe me is kind of just like a very half glass full person. You know, I've always just trying to find things that are enjoyable out of any situation, even if it's a bad one. You just make the most of it. I guess it's kind of a hard question for me.
Yeah, I know. But I definitely can relate to what you said. Okay. Can you tell us how did you start your career? Have you always worked in social media, or was it, something accidental?
That was kind of my goal. You know, I graduated from college with a degree in advertising and just didn't, really have any like specific thing picked out. So I had no book, nothing. So I really couldn't. It's hard to get a job. So I did a brief 3-month program at Miami Ad School after college and their social media strategy boot camp. So from there, that kind of helped me really put a focus on social. I did an internship while I was there. And then after that, that was really what I felt like I wanted to do, is just stay in social. It's a really fun industry. So I was able to land a job at or an internship at a mid-sized agency in New York. And it was a total disaster. I got nothing out of it. I was there for 3 months. Obviously didn't stay on. My manager left after 2 weeks. It was very much not what you wanted after your first job after school. So I guess the best thing I learned there was what not to do at a job that I was new at. So from there, I worked a couple odd jobs. I did a year working at the NBA, National Basketball Association, unrelated to social. But that was a really cool gig. It was a dream job for me. And while I was there, I had a little more flexibility looking for jobs. So I ended up doing I was technically an intern, but really I was a social media manager at a very small 3-person agency where we would just bring in a lot of clients most of them were very small, some of them startups. We did bring in a couple big clients, work with And One, which is this big sneaker company, which was a big one. But while I was there, I was able to get a lot of hands-on experience because it was so small. I was the copywriting team, I was the creative team, I was a lot of accounts, the account manager, I was running the paid social. So I really got to do a bit of everything. It was a lot of hands-on experience, just getting my feet wet. And then, and I was managing, anywhere from 3 to 9 accounts at a time, which I'm totally not recommend, but it was very much an experience. And then from there, I ended up at a mid-sized agency in New York called Xenoside, where I worked on a lot in whiskey. I started there as a community manager. That was my first real truly full-time job in social. And I worked my way up to a supervisor there. I was there for about 2.5 years. And then after that, I wound up at HBO, where I'm currently working on HBO Max on the social team for the brand.
That's great. That's quite a story.
Yeah, it was a roller coaster.
It was a roller coaster, yeah. But I'm sure that even the jobs that you maybe didn't like that much, helped you grow as a professional. So thank you for sharing that.
You get a lot of experience. A lot of people graduate college and work for one company, which is great. That would have been nice too, but it was cool to be at so many different places.
Yeah. And it's also really cool that you shared your experience working with smaller companies. I actually work in a startup, and my job is as a content writer. But as you can see, I'm also a co-host of a podcast, so I also do a lot of other jobs. So I think it's really interesting. Now, I know that a lot of people, especially the ones who don't work in social media, think that, the social media manager job is easy. All you have to do is scroll through social media. And I know for a fact that this is not true. So let me debunk this myth and tell us, how does your day-to-day schedule look like?
Yeah, there's also the myth of anything posted on social was by the intern. That's usually not true. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it really is. But most of the time it's not. Social's crazy. No day for me really has truly ever been the same. Even when as a community manager, when your main priorities are just managing inboxes and responding to comments, the stuff you get in your inboxes every day is different. The comments you're going to get every day are different. I would say today for me that the most common things that happen that I would be doing most days is just when I hop on in the morning, just, check our calendar for the day and the next couple days, make sure that things that are, that my team is handling are ready, make sure nothing is sitting with me, make sure I'm not being I'm not being a hang up on any of this stuff, working with key stakeholders and all that to just make sure all our upcoming programming and any social campaigns we're doing are all on track, and reviewing posts that have went live, like after they went live and after, a couple hours, just to see how they're doing, see if they're successful. You don't want to post anything just into the void, like put something out there and then not track how it does. I always feel it's important to make sure things are going well. And it's that, especially HBO, because we're working on so many different properties. Every day truly has been different. For me, I always had to make sure that the shows and the films I'm assigned to are, we're making sure that we're giving them as much love as we're giving everything else. We're keeping them on track, and we're keeping everything moving forward. Really, that's just, for me, that's the main day to day. But it really is, you're doing something different every day in social.
This is what I keep hearing from social media managers, that actually no day is like one another. So
no, it never is.
Yeah. And it's basically juggling between different tasks every day.
Yeah.
Now, because you mentioned campaigns, can you tell us where do you find inspiration for your content strategies and campaigns? Because I can imagine it's quite challenging to come up with new ideas every time and stay relevant, especially, I don't know, as you are the social media manager of one of the biggest paid televisions.
Yeah, luckily with HBO and HBO Max, we have so much programming and such a big content library that, there's so much to pull from. And we have a lot of brands, you have to build your content from the ground up. We have just vast library from true artists and really creative people who've already made content for us. And we just need to move their content forward and make the rest of the world aware of it and how great it is. But, in general awareness, I always make sure that, I think it's important to be present in the digital world. It's could be easy as someone who works in social to just not want to look at social when you're not working, because, sometimes you're sitting on Facebook all day. Why would you want to scroll through it? So I think it's really important to just be present and keep up with the trends and keep up with the times, because new things are coming every day. People are talking about new things every day. And so many brands are doing so many different and interesting things out there. I always make sure that I stay present in there and make sure I'm not missing anything that's a part of the cultural conversation. And I always try to keep up with competitors, make sure I'm following them on all the platforms. You're not going to, in any field that I've been in, I always try to keep up with the brands that are similar to us and check what they're doing, make sure we're not doing the exact same thing, but also, make sure that we're, keeping up quality wise with the stuff they're putting out, because everyone's putting out good content these days. And, one thing for me is if I'm developing a campaign or a strategy, I want to make sure that I think it's interesting, even if I'm not the target audience. if you're working on something and you don't find it interesting, why should somebody else find it interesting?
Definitely.
It's, even if you're not marketing towards yourself, be like, well, if I was into this stuff, I would think this is interesting. Like you always, there's no point in doing bad work in this field because nobody's gonna look at it.
For sure. Yeah, I think it's really important that you mentioned that you as a social media manager at first need to be a consumer yourself, because I feel that it's so easy for social media managers to sometimes forget how to be a user themselves because they look at social through a different perspective from an analytical point of view, let's say. Yeah, so I think it's really important to be connected. Now, can you tell us what is the social media campaign that you are most proud of? And if you can walk us a bit through the process behind of a social media campaign.
Sure. Yeah. So at my last gig, we worked in whiskey. We worked with an American bourbon distillery called Heaven Hill. And we managed mainly the marketing for their bigger products that are, well-known, like marketing brands. Evan Williams and Elijah Craig were two big ones. But we managed their like parent umbrella, Heaven Hill Distillery too. And so they had a lot of different whiskeys that didn't have marketing budgets. And so we would monitor like conversations around them. Usually there wasn't much, but did this one product in their portfolio. It's called Mellow Corn. It's like this 7-year-old $15 like weird looking whiskey. If you ever look at the label, it looks like it's from like 1955. And so it's always been like a favorite of bartenders, but for whatever reason, about 2 years ago, it just started getting a ton of buzz on Reddit because some guy posted a review about it. That was like basically a meme about how he loved it. And then it kind of just became like this meme bottle. It had its own dedicated subreddit, and there are no dedicated subreddits to whiskeys, like even like Jack Daniels, like it's not active. And so we at the time, we kind of jumped in the conversation. Like we got on Reddit, we did a Zoom call with the group. It was really fun. And so I was pushing to put together like an Instagram page for this brand, despite not really having any budget to do it. So it was really kind of like a guerrilla marketing thing where we're like, I had to convince everybody that was a good idea, and somehow nobody told me it was a bad idea. So we were able to actually get it off the ground. We had to build an entire brand persona for this bottle, and we had a lot of flexibility because it didn't really have a dedicated budget. It's really an organic thing. And so we really embraced the meme culture, the whole thing. It was very an internet speak brand. I use Slim Jim as a big inspiration for it. And nobody in whiskey, because it's really it's a dumb word, but it's a grown up thing. Nobody was having enough fun with it. So we really just embraced having fun, and we launched our page on April Fool's Day as a joke, but not really, because it wasn't a total joke. And people really loved it. People really became attached to the page, and it ended up being a pretty big success considering the size and budget of the project. And so I'm really proud of that one.
Yeah, that's so cool. I think it's really rewarding to have this sort of brainchild that you put in the world and see how it performs.
Yeah, it was my baby.
Yeah, it was your baby, exactly. Your digital baby.
Yeah.
Now, because we talked about, I don't know, how you gain satisfaction from your job, can you tell us what are the significant challenges, marketing challenges, social media challenges that you experience?
Yeah, I mean, I guess with HBO, and this is a fun challenge, honestly, in past jobs, especially with whiskey, when we're coming up with ways to market the product, a lot of it is creating content off the ground, shooting the bottle. Where can we shoot it? What's an interesting way to shoot it? But with HBO and HBO Max, all the content is, you're still making content, but you're making content out of content, because all these shows were shot, filmed, and in the can. And your job is just to really promote somebody else's work, and it's luckily at HBO and HBO Max, it's great work. I mean, this is the cream of the crop television. So you have to, the challenge really is how can you make this stuff, your own? How can you make it fit your brand voice of HBO Max in a new and interesting way, but not, compromising the vision that these artists and these actors and these producers put into this show, and ultimately honoring, what they did and keeping their tone of voice in the show, but also merging it into yours. And sometimes it's easy to adapt the show to your brand profile, something like Curb Your Enthusiasm. Our brand It's like, it's fun, it's lively, it's humorous. It can be snarky sometimes. Something like Curb would fit right in. It's a comedy show, but then you have other like more like, we worked on Dune, which was on the platform this year on HBO Max, and with something like that, it's like it's such a big endeavor. Like it's you have to figure out ways to like take that and not step on the toes of what Dune's marketing team is doing for their movie, but also make sure you're being true to your brand. And it's always an interesting challenge, but we got a great team, and usually we're able to put out quality stuff.
That's great. That's awesome. Now, as you said before, HBO is the creme de la creme. Everyone knows about HBO. So I'm curious, how would you describe their social media strategy?
Sure. So I work on HBO Max specifically, so I don't want to speak for the HBO brand itself. On social, I work on a little, but it's with both HBO and HBO Max. Luckily, like, it's nice to have this really just established and respected brand, and people associate HBO with quality and something they want to engage with. And so, we have followers. They want to follow our product. They like the brand. They want to see what we're up to.
Yep.
And so, from my perspective, I don't want to speak for the whole company and whole team, but to me, it really is about putting out quality content that adds to the cultural conversation around our shows and our films that are on HBO Max and on HBO. And I view the lens of, we have these established and beloved properties. We just launched the Harry Potter reunion. We have a Game of Thrones prequel series coming out. So those are big pieces of IP that people are really excited about, as am I. And so we want to, ideally, you can leverage those properties, put out great content around those properties, bring followers to your brand page, and then keep them around with good content, leverage your catalog, and then ultimately, when you're launching new shows that don't have maybe the established, groundwork like something like Harry Potter would, you want to be able to promote those shows to the audience that you've established and bring attention, awareness to those, and hopefully create new fans of those shows as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand. Okay. My next question is usually related to the impact that the pandemic had on different companies' social media strategies. Now, because I know you've only been working at HBO for the past 6 months, I was wondering if you can share with us how the pandemic affected your professional life, or if you can share, I don't know, some examples from your previous job.
Yeah. So, obviously, like everyone, I started working remote pretty much, and still am, which is, I'm not complaining about that aspect. But because I was working in whiskey, and that had to be a huge marketing shift for us. People did not stop drinking, which was great. We didn't have to make any cuts because those brands continue to have budgets, but the way you're promoting it changes, because usually, like, you'll promote some like at home consumption, but most of your stuff is like having drinks with friends, like going out, like having a good time. Nobody was going out. Bars were not open. And so we had to remove that entire aspect of our marketing budget. Mm-hmm. And our social strategy. We had to scrap every calendar we had written for April already and rewrite them. And then you're shifting to content about people drinking at home by themselves, which sounds, like very sad, but it's not totally sad. Like, it's a normal thing people do, but you have to come up with ways to, talk about that, but not, make it fun, make it sound like it's a good thing. Everyone's doing it. You could share your virtual cheers, but also with whiskey too, you can't tell people to drink too much either. So It was a really interesting, finding that type of content that makes sense without sounding sad or lonely or like you're over consuming the product. And, every single brand on earth, we started doing lives. And so people tasting bourbon is interesting to a few people, but how can you do that to make it interesting to a broader audience? And then how can you do that multiple times so that people continue to tune into your lives? every week while they're home. And so I had never really done lives before the pandemic hit, and so that was a big learning experience. And but it was a really interesting challenge, and I was lucky enough that in that field we continued to have budget, but we definitely had to pivot a lot. So it was really interesting.
Yeah, you definitely had some challenges there. Yeah. Okay, great. My next question for you would be, if you can think of what skills do you think are necessary to be successful as a social media manager? I know that generally speaking, people think that social media managers are creative and analytical individuals, but what can you say about that?
Yeah, and a lot of social media managers are creative and not analytical, and some are analytical and not creative. It's usually not one person running the team. We got a big team at HBO. We had a pretty big team at every job not the 3-person place, but at most jobs I worked at. But I think like skills beyond like the obvious ones, I think it's important to become an expert in the product that you're marketing. You don't need to know every single thing about it, but you have to be knowledgeable enough if you're writing copy about your product and being a community manager and responding to people. You have to be knowledgeable enough about the product to speak the same language as your audience, who usually is very passionate and knowledgeable about the product. They care about your account and your product, and they want to learn more about it. So you have to make sure you can give it to them. For me, coming into HBO Max in that aspect was easy because I've been watching HBO for the last 10 years. So it's great. I had a good knowledge of that product. When I started in bourbon, I didn't really drink bourbon, so I had to really learn a lot about the product. Now I just have all this knowledge of bourbon in my head that I have nothing to do with. But I personally think it's important to live your product as other people that like it do. And then I think another thing that's important is just being adaptable. As I mentioned, every day is really different and things literally change in social every day. You always have to be willing to get with the times, be up to date on everything. It's tough in social because if somebody writes a book about how to be a social media manager, it might be outdated in 7 months because it's so just changing at all times. So you just have to never dismiss any new trends, never be afraid to jump on them. I'm sure there's people out there who dismiss TikTok as a gimmick. Those people are probably not successful as social media managers. So it's just giving everything a chance and be willing to adapt to the times and not just doing what has worked for you in the past, because what worked for you 5 years ago might not work at all now.
I 100% agree. It's really important to be adaptable in the social media landscape, especially with all the algorithm changes and platforms that appear overnight. During my podcast episodes, I always learn something new from every guest. So, if you could teach me 3 things about social media, what would you teach me?
Yeah, there's so many. It's really a learn on the fly thing. But I mean, 3 important lessons I've learned is, social's always on. Things are always happening. You could have news relevant to your brand drop at midnight, and you might need to wake up and go work on a post or something. It's always important to remember that even though it's the weekend and you're off, there is a chance you're going to have to do something, and there's a chance that your brand is going to be relevant in the conversation because these people are online all the time. It's also a second one is not everything you do is going to work. People always say in advertising, be okay with killing your babies because sometimes you just have to. There's definitely a better way to say that. That was very not a good but just not everything's going to work. And I am always for being willing to try pretty much anything as long as it's on brand. But if you try something that you really liked and nobody else did, ask yourselves why it didn't work and why other stuff is working. And just never get discouraged by putting something out in the world and people not liking it. Just secret, but a lot of people on social media bring negative energy. And so I know a lot of people don't know that, especially on Twitter. But not everything you put out there is going to be well received. And you have to, after the fact, take a look in the mirror and think about why it didn't work compared to why other things worked. And then also, everything out there is everything out there is permanent. It's even if you delete something 5 seconds after the fact, it still was out there, and somebody might have screenshotted it. And so you have to be making sure to double, triple check your work. When I've been working, especially here, when I working on the Return to Hogwarts special, anytime we were putting out a trailer, it was like my fingers were like shaking before I would hit send on those trailers. I need to make sure like I didn't press that at the wrong time. I didn't want that stuff to go out early, and so just remember that anything you put out there can stay out there, even if you take it down.
Yeah, definitely. And if I could add on that, I would just say have fun, because at the end of the day, social media is fun, but be cautious, because as you said, everything that you put out there is permanent.
Yeah, it's a fun job. I mean, we do a lot, but the essence of our job is we do get paid to scroll and write tweets. I mean, it's a great gig.
Exactly.
There's a lot more than that goes into it, but if you're not having fun with it, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, moving on to my last question. If you can tell us, what are your future plans and where can people find you and follow you?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned I started at HBO this year, so hopefully just staying here for a long time. It's been a great experience so far. It's a dream job for me, so just keeping on with that, making good content. You guys want to find me, you could connect with me on LinkedIn if you want. It's at Ribeiro, Rebeiro. You find me on Twitter at Steve Ribeiro, though it's mostly tweets about American football. So if you're not into that, you could connect with me anyways. And then if you want to follow our pages at HBO Max, at HBO Max Movies is where you'll find my work. And if you want to check out Mellowcorn, that's at Mellowcorn. But I unfortunately no longer work on that.
Excellent. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Steve. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, thanks, Theo. This was great.
Okay, speak to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.